In today's show, we have another multi-topic episode where we discuss, is there any such person as a hero in all of history? Then we discuss, should the UK enforce sales of rented accommodation if the tenant can afford it? And finally we touch on Gary Lineker and the government refugee saga.
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, Tony, what the hell? What you gonna do, eh?
I'd love it one day when I ask that question, you come back with some positivity and go, yeah, I'm super good. I'm living the dream.
Yeah, whatever, Tony.
Oh, dear. Shall I risk it? Shall I? Shall I do it?
This bit I like it.
My body's going, no, don't do it, Tone. Don't do it.
This
Oh,
bit
go on,
cheers
then
me up.
say hi to our audience. Come
This
on.
bit cheers me up a lot, Tony. Hello, audience. Say, Tony.
Oh, no.
What's yellow, heavy, and can't swim?
Yellow, heavy, and can't swim. I don't know what I should say. I don't know. I don't know. Go on.
A fully loaded American school bus.
That's horrible. That's horrible. I'm sorry. That's horrible. You're in the lower regions of humor now. That's like horrible. Let's quickly move on. Please do not give up your day job. Let's move on. Let's leave this joke telling. Oh dear Lord. Let's move on with the show. And today we're hoping to have a he's still laughing. Look. We're hoping to have a number of topics for discussion today, but obviously, again, time permitting, of course. But the first one we want to kick off with is the question that you raised: is there any such person as a hero that we can class as a hero in all of history?
Thank you. And the thing is, I felt that to discuss this, we must first define, well, yes, we should first define what is a hero. Who is a hero? And I've done some reading about it, and it always seems to resolve into someone who is brave and helps others, at some risk to himself or herself, at some jeopardy to the self. He or she is of assistance to others. That seems to be the commonality between all the various definitions that I came across. That the selflessness is a fundamental part of heroism.
Yeah.
And
you're not looking for people who changed the world particularly, are you? You're just looking for heroes in history.
No, I was looking for what do people mean by a hero, because we know the topic is going to be, are there any historical heroes of merit, I suppose. Yes.
Well, there are a number of people who've been classed as heroes, and I've got a list here, and we can discuss the list. To be honest, I'm not sure on quite a lot of the people in this list.
Exactly, because I don't know if I even accept that definition. That's the funny thing. See, when you're trying to, you run into a problem when you actually try to define. For me, I don't know about others. When you run into trying to define who is a hero, what makes a person a hero, then you run into problems. And this is why I'm saying maybe the discussion is really more who is a hero in the sense of what makes a person a hero. Maybe that is the true discussion, rather than saying my personal fan favorite, Genghis Khan, was a hero, which I don't think anybody will accept,
No.
apart from me.
You see, I think it shouldn't be used to define someone in history as a hero. Rather, we hold people high with the fact how they've changed the world in perhaps a positive way. They had a big influence in a positive way. So there are plenty of people out there who have changed the world. And as you've mentioned, Genghis Khan changed the world, but not in a positive manner. Hitler changed the world, not in a positive manner. So I suppose the hero would be more akin to how someone changed the world, perhaps, in a positive way, not necessarily on a battlefield.
Genghis Khan created the world's, I think, by land mass, if not the greatest empire, then the second greatest after the British Empire.
But what does that mean? The greatest empire? It's in a textbook. It means nothing. At the end of the day, it's the meaning to the people.
Peace and quiet for 800 years or something, or whatever.
I'm not sure it was peace and quiet.
Yeah, because everywhere that they settled, no one dared.
Yeah, in fear. You can define peace and quiet if you're in fear. Of course you can. But that doesn't make somebody happy. They're living in fear day to day. That's not a success.
I'm not sure they were living in fear, because once they had kowtowed to the Great Khan, it was peace and happiness.
Are you sure about that?
I'm not sure about the 800 years. I don't know how long it lasted, but it wasn't for an awfully long time.
That seems rather long, because clearly he wouldn't have lived that long. And if
died, I meant the empire, not him.
No, but
it's his empire, and they had a good tradition about who was taking over. They didn't have civil wars, about when sons always tried to take over. This son is fighting that son, and all vying for this. So, by and large, I think as things were in those days, it was good going for a while.
I'd like to read up more on his particular legacy. Okay. I'm not sure it's quite as rosy as you're making it sound.
Yeah, quite as rosy.
It makes it sound like it's a sweetness in heaven. He's conquered. He's done it great. Everyone's happy. Yeah, joy.
Well, they're always sort of the whiners, the ne'er-do-wells who always insist on things like freedom.
Yeah, that little thing. Yeah, freedom,
self-determination.
Choice,
the usual crowd, usual troublemakers. And obviously, my man wasn't. He wasn't really one for debate about this sort of thing. Likely to show up with a horde and.
You're strange, because you seem to have an affiliation with people like that. So you can probably hold him up as a hero because of the way his character is and his
very no nonsense.
Unfortunately, if you ask a big chunk of the population, they wouldn't put Genghis Khan at the top of their list.
Or which population?
Any population. I would be very surprised if many people saw Genghis Khan as a hero like you do.
It's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, the ones whose relatives he decimated, or not even decimated, he annihilated, obviously they would have a somewhat contrary point of view. Maybe think that he didn't do well by them. A lot of people complain if you massacre their family, they could end up being a bit upset.
Just a bit.
Yeah, yes, uncomfortable with that outcome. So sure, but I don't. You see, his philosophy was this. Okay, that we're conquerors. We're going to conquer. We're going to, and it's our lifestyle. It's what we do. We conquer and we settle lands. But once they are settled, they really truly are settled. Okay, there are laws. Here are the laws. Blah 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 blah. Very no nonsense laws. And if you live within those laws, you're really you don't have much to worry about, and I know you've got a strong army.
Yeah, but you say about the laws, okay? You say you live within the laws, but who's setting those laws? Is
Well,
it the people,
the
or
great
is it
Khan.
just one or two people at the top who
There's one or two
dictate
people.
what
One or two
everybody
people
has
at
to
the
do?
top. There's the great Khan.
Well, then in that case, people are again having no choice at all. They're in fear. They're doing it because of what poor end result could happen to them if they go against what they've been dictated to. And that's the very essence of a dictator. It doesn't mean people are happy. It just means people are having to put up with it for fear of the repercussions if they don't. That's not a great system. You can't hold them up as heroes.
Most people, if they live in a benevolent dictatorship, as I believe we discussed before, because it's the benevolent dictatorship is probably the best form of government ever.
Possibly.
The problem is this: how do you guarantee that the dictator is going to be benevolent? That's why it's no good. That's why in real life it doesn't work, because you can't. But where it has worked, it has always been fabulous and wonderful.
I'd like to know how many examples in history.
Well, if you discount the rather controversial Genghis Khan, because I mean, you're right that I don't have the data at hand to support my thesis about him. I've got one in the whole of history.
One.
I don't know. It was Marcus Aurelius, I think was his name, a Roman.
Marcus Aurelius, yeah, Rome.
Yeah, Rome. I think what happened with him was that he was a soldier. He was famous. He won some battles. Then he retired, went to his villa in the countryside, was running his villa and his farm and slaves and all that. Well, it's his household and everything. He was a happy camper. But in the capital, back in Rome, the emperor was. I'm not really sure if they even had emperors in those days. I know they didn't. The Senate was chaotic, and the empire was in big trouble. He went back to Rome, killed all the people who needed to be killed, drew up an army, rode north into Germany, I believe, settled the German issues and all sorts of issues all over the place, and restored peace and quiet to the empire. And then rode back to Rome, took off his uniform, and went back to the farm.
He did.
Yeah.
There was a very famous film, Gladiator, which basically echoed that story. However, when he left Rome and went back to living his house as a normal person, or wanted to anyway, as the film portrays, whether it's truthful or not, his family were butchered.
Oh yeah, so, no, that's the film. That's not.
Well, that's the film. Whether that's true, I don't know. It's it didn't portray
the
well.
actual person I'm talking about, he died an old happy man, and he left behind this system. No, I'm telling you, I know this guy.
Okay.
And he left behind a nice thing that survived him, but not long after his death, it reverted to type.
Because he wanted
That's the problem with dictators, by the way. When they leave the stage, even if they are benevolent, right? When they leave the stage, things revert to type because there's no permanent power structure, because it's not allowed under dictatorship.
Well,
so the lack of that power structure means that people are vying for power again, and that leads to chaos. So it is inherently unstable, unlike a democracy where you've got a power structure in place and people come into it and leave, and come into it and leave, you see? So that allows this sort of longevity. And it's supposed to, and it is more stable. That is one of the things that democracy has that beats dictatorship. Dictatorship is inherently unstable, but you can definitely have a even though it's rare, a benevolent dictator.
You see,
I would be a benevolent dictator, for instance.
You would be.
Yeah, I'd be a fabulous. You know me. I mean, if you've seen me at work as
you chop people's heads off.
Sorry?
You chop
the ones whose heads need chopping off. Everyone. There were a lot of people who just usefully shouldn't be on the planet. Seriously.
Who makes that
Me.
differentiation? You see? And what if someone disagrees with your dictatorship and says, well, actually, they're a really nice person. I know them better than you.
Well, you can have your opinion, and you're entitled to your opinion. And
Not
I
the
don't mind.
dictator and your word
I don't mind
says.
that it's your opinion, but it's what you do about it. If you want to protest peacefully, look, I'm a very strange person. You can protest peacefully, but you can't protest violently, and you can't try to destabilize my government. But if you are upset about something and you protest, then as a benevolent dictator, I'll actually, listen to what you have to say. But I will make the final decision. And once I have made the final decision, I expect everybody to toe the party line.
So can somebody let's in this hypothetical, you're the benign dictator. In this hypothetical scenario, you would listen to opinions?
The best dictators do, because you can't be against everybody. There is an army, and at the end of the day, if somebody else can actually lead the army, the Praetorian Guard, who's going to guard the Guardians? You do have to listen. You can't just go sort of mental and just do anything and everything you want. There's no real dictatorship like that. Dictatorship is about maintaining an overall thrall over others and keeping people in fear of others. The secret police are afraid of the army is afraid of the secret police. Everybody's informing on everybody, and that kind of thing. The sense, the all pervasive sense of fear. But you can't afford to piss off everybody, because if you do that, you're not. Ceausescu, all these people. What's his name in Italy? The Il Duce.
Mussolini?
Mussolini ended up hanging, upside down in a.
Well, dictators, no matter what, they always end up on the losing end.
Not always.
Well,
Mobutu Sese Seko, he died in luxury and everything, and no, not always at all. And he was not a very good. He was not a benevolent dictator by any means.
What about? I mean, okay, we're digressing a little bit from the show's topic really here. We're trying to compare, but the thing is, the list I have is people who change the world rather than heroes. And what we could do is read out the list and see what we think of that list.
That's a good plan.
In whether or not we quantify these people as being heroes effectively because they change the world in a certain capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start off with the number one who's on the list is Jesus of Nazareth.
Oh, I was assuming that he was a real person.
If he was, then he has influence.
If there was a historical Jesus, there are certain questions about it, and I don't even know what I believe, to be honest. I've heard things that convinced me that there was a historical Jesus. I've heard things that convinced me that there wasn't a historical Jesus. So I guess I'm sort of not absolutely convinced.
Well, the point is,
Paul of Tarsus is probably the one you're talking about. If you're talking about who is responsible for the Christian religion in its early form,
present form.
early form, early in the sense that the thing that became what we know today as Christianity. It's Paul of Tarsus. So you might say, is Paul of Tarsus a hero?
Well,
or significant person?
I think it's because the influence that the name of Jesus has on such a big sway of the world's population. But then equally, we have Muhammad in that list. So if you're looking at religious figures, they have certainly influenced the planet in a large manner, but would you class them as heroes? I don't know.
What am I trying to say? In full cognizance of the fact that I might not become the target of some.
No, don't be. No,
because my answer is no. I don't believe it's a hero. Is my answer. Okay. I certainly don't. I mean,
Jesus as well. You don't believe any religious figure is a hero? because there's Buddha in this list as well, and basically all the leaders
the Buddha's message. I don't know if it was written down in his lifetime. Like Muhammad's message wasn't written down. Actually, Jesus's message wasn't written down in his
no,
lifetime.
so I mean, none of them have. Although there are
Muhammad's is probably the closest, because it was his sayings or his the things he said was written down by Aisha, his wife. And
in the other book, isn't it?
And
not in the Quran, but
sorry,
not in the Quran. It's the other book, isn't it?
No, it's the Quran. The sheaves of the sheaves that were collected and collated, and Aisha was responsible, which is very peculiar in Islamic religion. There's actually a woman, Aisha, and her companions, who collated and collected these things, and made them and sold them into what is today the Quran. You're thinking about the hadith.
Hadith, that's it. Yeah, traditions.
You're thinking about the hadith.
But they were also from Muhammad, were they not?
But what? Yeah. Well, the qualitative difference is that Aisha instituted and her companions instituted a strict rule as to what could go into the Quran. I think there had to be a certain number of witnesses, and they had to remember the same thing for it to be written down and included. A hadith had less strict, looser.
More observations, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody said, and so anyway, a Muslim would be better able to explain the difference.
Of course. But what we're saying here,
what I'm saying is that he did not write down. Muhammad himself was not responsible. He didn't
write it down. No.
Write it down. Neither did Jesus.
No.
And neither did the Buddha. So
Buddha, no.
See,
we have all of them on this list. So because they changed history, and they did. But if we're going to use their teachers
changed.
Yes.
Muhammad of course actually fought wars. Fought battles, he fought battles, lost a couple, won a few. And from that point of view, he was very hands-on in his active years. Jesus never fought any battles, neither did the Buddha, obviously.
No.
So if you're talking about somebody who actually got on a horse, on a camel, and did something, that would be...
Well, I'm not defining that as a hero just because someone was physically active in something. Let me read a few others.
He spread his religion. That's what I'm trying to say. He spread his religion, but Jesus didn't spread his religion. He preached, and the Buddha preached, and I can't think of somebody else who spread their religion. Who spread their religion? This is what I'm trying to say. I can't think of someone else.
Anyway, I'm mindful of the time here. Let's keep it more succinct here. But if I give you some names, I'd like to let's do it as a quick response, if you can. So I'll read out some names, and you say yes or no. As simple as that. Now, you can obviously add a comment if you feel the need. Keep it interesting. But do you feel that these people change the world and could be classed as a hero or not? And if you definitely think no, say absolutely not, and I'll give you my comments as well. So we've mentioned Jesus. Okay. Not sure about hero, but he certainly changed the world from his teachings down the line.
I wouldn't say hero.
No. Muhammad?
No.
The same? No. Teachings changed the world for sure, but hero, I'm not sure. I've got an interesting one here. Thomas Jefferson.
Well, no, he owned a slave. He owned slaves.
Author of the Declaration of Independence.
He owned slaves. So his idea
so
of
he's
what
not
a free
hero.
man is not a hero.
No. Interesting one, Mikhail Gorbachev.
Absolutely not. I actually think that he was a Western stooge, a shill, a double agent.
Well, he's obviously not viewed favorably by a chunk of the Russian population.
You can imagine the entire pro-Putin, pro-Russia.
He was more held up by the West than the Russians themselves. But he did bring democracy. That's what he's hailed for. But again, he did change the world because the Iron Curtain came down. So there was positives there. But is he a hero?
Nope.
No. Okay.
A hero would have had the NATO sign a treaty, international treaty.
Possibly.
Not just take their word for it. Ridiculous.
I mean, I've got some here that seem ridiculous on this list. I don't know who come up with this list. It's biographyonline.net,
Mhm.
and they did a survey. So, and it does say change the world for better or for worse, actually. So they have included a number of people in this list who have changed the world, but we can debate whether it's good or bad.
Mhm.
Winston Churchill.
Killed 3 million people in Burma and starved them to death so he could feed the British Army. And he was racist. Well, he was completely and totally racist. A great orator and a good wartime leader.
Not a hero.
Well, certainly from the point of view of Britain, he was a hero.
Well,
So
indeed.
whether he was a global hero, a worldwide hero, but
Respected.
certainly I'd say that and for all his faults and everything, so far he comes closest to being a hero.
Interesting. Because he fought as a leader during a terrible war, and
when the chips were down, he did what needed to be done. And I mean, you say I would be a terrible dictator. There are no circumstances under which I'd starve 3 million people for any reason whatsoever. I wouldn't starve anyone for any reason, not on purpose. So, no, I think people can find other, alternatives if they have a mindset to do so. So, no.
let's move on. We got some strange one here. I mean, William Shakespeare? No.
Well, hero of the English language. I mean, look, we're using his phrases till today.
Well, of course, but that doesn't make him a hero. He's changed the world, but not a hero. I
well,
mean,
hero of the English
respect,
language.
yeah, absolutely.
But if you want to just codify it and just make it hero of the English language,
Then
yeah,
yes, you could say that.
He did amazing. He did, amazing
but you
work.
could then, if you're going to say that, then we could
frame 500 years later. I was not talking about the man. I mean, come on.
But we could frame the others and say the same.
Well, I did say that Winston Churchill is a hero of the British. He's a British hero, but I'm not sure it's a worldwide hero. So go and mention his name in Burma if you think it's
exactly.
Not a worldwide hero. No.
Even in some places in the Middle East as well.
Middle East and Africa,
indeed.
the Mau Mau, the Kenyans don't like him much.
How about Martin Luther King?
No. Well, I suppose he made did he make a change? I mean,
he did. Civil rights.
He represented
a big swathe of the population.
Did he make it, or did he represent it?
He represented it, and he created the movement, which then led to the change. So he certainly was an influencer, so to speak. And is he a hero? Was he alive to see the changes that his drive brought forward? No.
Well, I think the funny thing is that his death helped his
cause. Yeah,
helped his cause.
Yeah.
So it backfired on the killers by big time.
Well, you've made a martyr.
He made a martyr of him. Let's not forget what he was doing. I think we can actually say in black and white that he was having an affair. He came out onto the balcony of a motel, and he was in that motel because he was having an illicit affair with some woman. So
I don't know about that, actually. That's
you don't?
Interesting. No, I didn't know about that.
And I think we can actually, I mean, first of all, we can't libel a dead man, but that's not even the point. The point is that I am not traducing his memory or anything. I think I'm surprised you don't know about it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Edgar Hoover was trying to use that was going to use it against him, but then the bullet paid to that plan. They're going to try to turn him based on their knowledge.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
So, the answer.
Yeah, Martin Luther King.
I think he trumps the others so far. I think he trumps the others.
I think because his motives were admirable, and
yes.
he wasn't too.
He didn't have power, so there's a limit to what he could do.
Yeah, but he still managed to do a lot, considering he wasn't a leader as such in a nation state. For instance.
So far, he trumps the others.
Okay, even Winston.
Yes. Because he's more global. I said Winston is a British hero. Martin Luther King is someone that everyone can point to his "I Have a Dream" speech, and
Oh,
that's
that was
equality, kind of
unbelievable.
equality
Yeah.
for everyone. So whether you're Asian,
Doesn't
African,
matter your skin
doesn't
color.
matter. Yeah. So from that point of view, he specified. I don't want to say codified. So I've already said it earlier. He put it into words, and yeah. So I'm not
Okay.
actually quite. I'm not. So far, I haven't accepted anyone as a hero, but I said he's the closest. All right. So he's
Okay.
beaten the others so far.
Next one I've got is Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
He helped
That's an
end
American.
slavery, so that was admirable because he did, and
He did.
he presided the victory over Civil War, which got rid of the argument of the Confederation states
Yes, I
that
know.
wanted to keep slavery.
But I don't think that was his motive. And I think he was actually trying his best to reach an accommodation with the Confederacy. They were just too stiff-necked. I mean, if they had
They
bent a
wouldn't
little
listen
bit,
to anything that he was trying to propose. They
yeah.
just flatly did not want to end slavery, and that was one thing that
I'm
he
not even
wanted
sure
to
that
do.
slavery was even the problem.
It was a
No,
problem
no,
because
no. It
that
was
was
the
part
power.
of
It
the
was the power
reasoning for
of.
the
It was the
Confederation
power of
states.
the state. The Confederacy, as I understand it, thought that the state should have more power and federal government should have less power, and Abraham Lincoln thought vice versa. And the issue that centered around was slavery, but an accommodation might have been met if the South was willing to do that. So this is why I'm saying that Abraham Lincoln wasn't particularly gung ho. I mean, he wasn't there fighting for.
No, that's not his way, but he did it in a measured way, if we can put it that way.
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go with Abraham Lincoln.
Okay, all right. Still a hero to some, but not worldwide, sure.
Not to me.
Okay. What about Nelson Mandela?
I think he's a numpty.
He's what? Sorry,
A numpty. I mean,
why?
he should have come out and been very truculent and very trenchant with the people who had instituted apartheid. All his Mr. Nicey goody two shoes simply postponed what should have been a day of reckoning and what should have been blood spilt on the streets so that the country can move forward.
They did move forward.
No,
In
they haven't moved
'94, he
forward.
became the president.
Now, to me, the blacks in South Africa are doing to the whites what the whites were doing to the blacks, and because this was never resolved. If it had been resolved properly,
There was a fear that that would happen, but it hasn't really
yeah. Well,
transcended.
from what I'm seeing, there are now places where white people can't get jobs because they're white. That's not what Nelson Mandela.
No,
No,
he didn't want that. That's why I
exactly.
call the Rainbow Nation, because everyone
Well,
of any color.
so by not actually addressing these things, spilling the blood that needs to be spilled, and then being able to draw a line under and say, look, we've done all that, we've had our vengeance. This is what we're going to do. Make proper institutions and move forward together as one happy rainbow nation. He didn't do that. He tried to virtue signal his way out of it. And
Well, that it did work. It worked
no,
for
it
him.
didn't. I'm saying that there's issues now. All it did was it
I don't
postponed the
think
day
it's
of,
because he's passed away. People
the day
respected
of.
the fact that he took that
I
stance.
didn't
And
respect it. I
well,
wanted it
I
more.
think more problems have occurred since he's gone.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
saying that if
that's
he had
not his
handled it,
problem. He
yeah,
was the
he could
one that
have.
instigated
He
the
could have
good
done
stuff.
things in such a way that he would have sorted out the future, not just his own time. I mean, he was basically running around the world being toasted by everyone, and that's
Well,
not what you're supposed to.
okay. Going back to our point of our topic here, is he a hero? Because he's
No,
viewed as a hero across the world, actually.
not by time.
Not by Tyre. Interesting. Okay. I mean, the list, they've actually
There's one you
extended the
haven't
list.
mentioned.
Well, the list is huge,
Why didn't you
actually.
mention Mahatma Gandhi?
He's on the list.
Yeah, Mahatma
He was
Gandhi.
next. But I was looking at the list. I mean, we've covered a number
Mahatma
already. I'm
Gandhi.
just thinking of the time.
Again. Yes, a couple of foibles. Sleeping naked with a young girl I don't know what that was about. No one is accusing him of having sexual relations with her, but I don't understand why he had to do that. That's kind of weird, especially for us in this day and age, in 2023.
Yeah, but
That's a
that
bit.
doesn't make it wrong back then.
Yeah, like I
You see what
said,
I'm
I
saying?
don't know what it's
It's
all about. And I'm not exactly sure about his bona fides when it comes to racism. I think he was actually racist. I think I've heard that he was racist, but I don't know if it's true or not. People tend not to dwell on it. And I think when push comes to shove for what he did and the fight that he fought to keep things non-violent, he's very close to being
hero.
a hero.
Hmm.
Not quite there, but very close. I'll put him on an equal footing with Martin Luther King.
Luther King. Okay. I'm going to quickly scan this list
Yeah,
and just read out names. Now, if there's any that you find interesting, then stop me. But the list is too big for us to discuss during this show. But I'll just pick out some that stand out for me, and then you see what you think. I mean, some of these I don't think should be even considered. But hey, you've got Socrates, you've got Karl Marx, you've got Charles Darwin, you've got
What?
Sir Isaac Newton, Confucius.
Sir Isaac Newton, for asking a question. I was explaining this to my students the other day, and I said, you know, what was he famous for? And everybody said, gravity. I said, well, what does it mean? He said, oh, because the apple fell on his head. And I said, actually, that's not the question he asked. The question he asked wasn't why did the apple fall down? The question he asked is why didn't the apple fall up? That is genius. That is gobsmacking, because you and I, we could see apples fall down every single day of our lives. We would never cross our minds to say, why isn't it going up? And then imagine being 21 years old. I think he was 21 years old, right? And he was trying to describe planetary motions, and there was no mathematics that could do that. So he invented calculus. I mean, you know, come on, man. That's I mean, come on.
But yeah, he's mathematicians and
man.
scientists, certainly. I mean, like I
Yeah.
said, Sir Isaac Newton we got on here. We've got people like Queen Victoria.
Copernicus
is on here. Alexander the Great. I'm just going through Moses.
No.
Christopher Columbus.
Definitely not.
Marcus Aurelius, who you've already mentioned.
There he is.
Galileo. Plato.
It was Copernicus. I think
Joan of Arc.
He did chicken out. Joan of Arc is a very interesting one. I mean, I don't see how you wouldn't make her a hero. I mean, yeah, she knows something funny. I know I'm MGTOW and all that, but I won't be at all surprised if I don't shock my MGTOW community. They wouldn't be shocked, because obviously. I think Joan of Arc is probably there. I think you're looking at a hero there. A heroine.
Indeed.
I think you're looking at a heroine. I mean, what was she, 14 or something ridiculous? And
yeah,
how the heck do you, a 14-year-old? I mean, the whole thing is just, you know, you got to double check. Is it real? You know, you got to double check. Did this really happen? And then done in by the same people she was trying to help.
Yeah, that's wrong. Hey.
Goodness gracious me. So, okay, there we are. Yeah.
Let's keep going. I mean, I'll read a few more. Charlemagne, Aristotle, Voltaire, Catherine the Great, Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci was ahead of his time. Goodness me. Albert Einstein, Ataturk, founder of the Turkish Republic.
Ataturk. Ataturk, actually.
Ataturk. Yes, Ataturk. My apologies, my pronunciation.
Ataturk.
Pablo Picasso. Margaret Thatcher? Oh dear. Yikes. Not sure about that. Muhammad Ali.
The answer to that one is yikes.
Muhammad Ali. I don't know about that either. Who've we got?
Interesting character.
Tim Berners-Lee. I wouldn't call him a hero for setting up the internet, but it's become what it is.
Let's have a think about Muhammad Ali for a second. Given his what he went through with the fight against going to Vietnam and everything, and was being stripped of this and that and everything. He fought the good fight though, didn't he?
not literal, but yeah, the fact that he was stripped. He didn't
Yes.
want to go to war.
He's like he said, it wasn't his war.
No.
He said he doesn't have any beef with the Vietnamese. What was going to go and kill them for?
Yeah.
And he was stripped of his title and everything, and he fought the good fight. Fighting the good fight, I think, is part of it. So I don't know.
Interesting what you just said there, where he had no beef with the Vietnamese people. Did you know, just on a side issue here, statistics show that the majority of soldiers don't fire their weapons?
I don't think he would have been sent to the front anyway, not because he wouldn't send a national hero to the front.
No, you
I
wouldn't.
think he knew. I mean,
he knew
Elvis
that he wouldn't be
Presley
sent to the front. But what I'm saying is the majority of people in the army, even near the front line, do not fire their weapons. There's only 20% of them that do.
Oh, okay. How come?
Because a lot of them are in the army, but they too have this. Why would I want to kill this person?
So you mean they're meant? So they're meant to fire, but they don't fire.
They don't fire unless they're being fired on directly themselves.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the stats are quite incredible, but it's not because they're not doing their job, because they are. They're trying to save their colleagues, help their colleagues, but they are reluctant to fire against the enemy because they don't want to kill them. They don't want to kill anybody. They're doing their job. They're a soldier, but they don't actually want to kill the enemy directly if they can avoid to. But if they're under pressure, then yes, they would. But otherwise, they wouldn't. And it's only a 20% group, but that seemed to be the ones that fire.
Terrible.
No, it's across the board. It's not.
Yeah, it's not just. Terrible.
It's not just. Well, I think morally we have this thing in our head that says, "Why am I killing another fellow human?" Because now, if they're attacking you directly, about to kill you, then of course, then you will. But without that being there,
well, I guess Tyler be the 20%, pal. That's
you might be. You might be indeed. Okay, let's move on with this list because we need to wrap up this topic if we want to cover something else. But I mean, someone on this list, again, not a hero, but you mentioned him before, Joseph Stalin. Good grief.
Good old Stalin.
No.
Good old Stalin.
Mother Teresa.
So you don't want to talk about Joseph Stalin? Okay.
No. Mother Teresa, Bill Gates, Genghis Khan is on this list.
I can't believe he's on this list. Man. The great Khan. Oh,
Good
wow.
grief.
My man.
George Orwell, Thomas Edison.
George Orwell, Services to Literature, I mean, 1984, Animal Farm. I mean, he saw it coming, didn't he?
He did.
Not sure how that makes him a hero, but
no, exactly. Some of these are a little vague, and they can be a little bit.
I'm seriously impressed though with George Orwell's work. It's just amazing.
Well, there's a few people like that, which is what I mean. If they've changed the world in a positive way, you can class them as a hero. I mean, look, we've got here Eva Perón, the First Lady of Argentina. Now,
I never understood
for Argentinians.
I never understood what her thing was.
She galvanized the nation, though, didn't she?
Well, I don't know. There've been, I know that very famous musical. I can't forget the name of the composer.
Don't Cry for Me, Argentina.
That very famous song, famous musical. Madonna did it. Others have done it too. And I kept asking around, why is this woman famous? What did she do? And I know she came from poor, humble beginnings. Ended up in the arms of a dictator, Allende, wasn't it? Allende or something like that. And
I can't remember.
Oh, is it Perón? Sorry, Perón. That's Eva Perón. Perón is the man's name. and then I don't know. There's this scene from the film and from the stage play where she's in front of this big crowd and she's singing "Don't Cry for Me." And it's like, don't cry about what? And it's all pretty. From my point of view, it's unclear. Kind of murky. I don't know what the heck her claim to fame is. Okay. I don't know why I even know of her, and so I'm obviously gonna be a heroine.
Okay, let's move on because I'm mindful I want to wrap up this topic. One more, which I think is interesting, which has been added in by the younger generation as a hero, Steve Jobs. I'm not sure that the Apple products
Well, he did something,
deserve a
didn't he?
hero.
I mean,
I
he
don't.
himself was a sort of questionable character, from what a lot of people have said.
Hmm,
But you can't deny that he did create one heck of a tech giant.
indeed, but is it worthy of herodom, if there's such a word?
No such word. And
It sounded good though.
heroism, I think, is what you're looking for.
Heroism, that's the one, not herodom. Yes.
uh,
Okay, I mean, this list, if people are interested, then
I'm
do a
taking that back.
search.
If you had told me before the beginning of this, if you had told me before we started the show that I was going to end up choosing a woman as the only confirmed hero or heroine, I'd have said no.
Wow.
I wouldn't
So
even
you've
have.
surprised yourself here.
I'm shocked myself. I'm shocked. Yeah, I think
Interesting.
the only person that I actually accept as being genuine, no nonsense, nothing to quibble about, hero
Here's a
is
girl.
Joan of Arc.
And a young girl
And a
as
young
well.
girl at that. She
Interesting.
did it. She got out there. She did it. Well done, her.
So for the benefit of our listeners, as we wrap up this topic, if you want to go to biographyonline.net and you can search for this list. And obviously, let us know in any of the comments of our show what you think. Who do you deem as your hero? I mean, we've heard ours, but is there anybody we haven't mentioned that you think actually they should be on that list? So, yeah, please share. We value your comments. We'd love to hear what you think of this particular one. Okay. Now we've done this one to death, basically. So we'll move on and cover another topic. This is one that you again raised, Tayo, and it's more for our UK audience. And you're basically asking, should the UK enforce sales of rented accommodation if the tenant can afford it, of course? Why have you brought this up?
Because I'm looking around in the country, and this idea that there are some people who are making killings out of buying up houses and then putting them up for rent is unconscionable. It's immoral, and I have no idea why the government allows it.
Well,
You shouldn't. No one should be doing that. Okay, people ought to be able to buy their own houses. There's no reason why other people. There's no reason why we should have a situation where people are paying other people's mortgages. I mean, people
but
who
that's
don't
what
have
rent
enough
is. So
money.
what you're saying then, the government should own all the houses?
No, not the government should own all the houses.
So who's
If
going
you
to own the house?
people, everyone's going to own. People, you, me.
No, but when a house is made, let's say you've got a new, a new estate. No one's been there before. They're going to be up for sale, and people will buy them. Okay. Now, what if they don't want to live in them? What's wrong
So
with
in
that?
that case, if you don't want to live with them, you can't buy them. Basically, it has to go to sale for somebody who wants to live in them, and the government should make that happen.
But okay, but if they can't afford to buy the house, there's got to be a rent paid to someone.
Well, in that case, they should. What's the word I'm looking for? When you come together as a group,
A collective?
a collective.
Community?
Yeah. No, like in the house with 4 bedrooms, you could get 4 people coming together and working together and buying a house together.
That's
So it would be
logistically difficult, though.
over a period of time. Some people would drop out, and the others were able to take over and things like this. I mean,
Some people may not want to buy a house. There's a big community out there that don't want to do it. They
I
just
don't know
want to
about that.
rent.
Where do you get that from? I've never had anybody who doesn't want to buy because nobody
There
wants
is
to
a
think.
big group of people that do not want to buy a house. They don't want the burden. They
I
want to
don't.
be able to move around, and that rental income gives them that flexibility.
I think in that case you could probably owned by the council. You could pay the council or something like that, and at
Well,
least we know it's going to the community.
the
So
council
not
have.
individuals then. So
Okay.
individuals just can't own property, and
Well,
if
the
you don't
thing,
live there, you can't own it. That's
what
it.
happened, funny enough, when Margaret Thatcher came in, one of her policies was she wanted the British people to own property rather than rent it. So she said, and because a lot of property was owned by councils and people were renting, she opened it up and said that if someone has been in their house without defaulting on any payments for 5 years, I think it was, I mean, I may stand corrected on that figure, but certainly 5 years of continuous renting, then they had the option to purchase that property from the council.
Mhm.
And the government at the time thought that not many people would take this up, but they were flooded by people buying properties from the
Yeah.
council.
Yeah.
The problem was, guess what happened? They bought the property and then rented it out privately and went and
Yeah.
found somewhere else to live.
So obviously that in my proposal that would be illegal. You wouldn't be able to do that.
So you're allowed to buy it as long as you live in it.
You can buy it as long as you live in it, and if you try to play fast and funny, and we find out, we seize the property, you lose it.
So you can't rent it, in other words.
No,
You have to live in it or
you have
sell
to live
it.
in it. You have to live in it or sell it.
So no one is allowed to rent unless it's the government or the council.
Correct.
So people have lost their freedom in terms of,
To rip off other people, yeah, you no more freedom to do that.
well, it's not ripping off, is it? It's the
To me, it's
markets that
ripping.
do that.
To me, it's ripping off. What you go and get a legitimate form of investment. Don't. Any investment you make should not make it harder for another person to get into that, into get onto that, into that activity. The more houses that one person owns, the harder it is for anybody else to own a house. So obviously, it's an investment for you, but your investment is not beneficial in one sense to the rest of society because it is impeding others. That's the problem. That's why I have a big problem. Problem
You're
with it.
saying that
There
if
are
there was enough
conglomerates.
houses, you wouldn't have a problem with this.
Exactly. But there aren't. And you got conglomerates now. You've got actual people who are forming associations and buying more and more and more and more and more houses. So when it comes to I want to buy a house, you can't because some idiot owns 2,000 houses. So what the heck is this?
Well, you can always buy a house if you, but then
No, I'm
obviously the
saying,
price goes up.
obviously, you got 2,000 houses. No, how are you going to buy it? Because the guy doesn't want, these people don't want to sell because they want to keep
The rental
leasing it.
income.
They want the rental income. So this is nonsensical. You can't do that. You shouldn't be able to do that.
So you're saying
You
then if
might
you
have-
own
you
a
might-
house, you either live in it or it stays empty, or you sell it for someone who does want to live in it.
Yeah,
So rental.
I suppose what you'd have is you would have a thing where you could have you can have maybe one property because like I have a house here, but maybe I moved to Spain or somewhere. It doesn't force me to sell the house. So you could have one property which is your house, but you don't live there. You live outside the country or something.
So
But
can
you
you
can't-
rent your house then?
Well, I suppose you could if you are, let's say, you live in Manchester, but you work in Portsmouth,
Okay.
right? Obviously, you're not in Manchester, so what are you going to do?
So what you're saying, you're putting a curb on the number of houses people can
Probably
own.
kind of two. Yeah, your second. Maybe just leave it so you can have one house and you can rent another, and that's it. Two tops. After that, no, because parents leave properties behind for kids and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's acceptable. Yeah,
So
I think
one property, or you're limiting the number of properties someone.
that is my
Uh-huh.
intention. My intention is to really go after the conglomerates, the people who come together, the associations. There are certain people in this country who come together and then they buy more and more and more houses.
Okay.
And the more successful they are, the more houses they buy. And it's very, very selfish. It's just incredible. It's like a virus. They're spreading like a virus. It's very destructive, but they don't care. It's just the money. It's ridiculous. And it's not even a form of work. It's just
It's
dishonorable.
investment, isn't it? You're using your income in bricks and mortar, which is what people want.
I see it as being completely immoral. It's immoral and it's selfish. It's just pernicious. It's just not good for society.
Interesting. It's an interesting idea. So you limit people's not purchasing power because they could buy the houses, just don't rent them. You then buy them to then sell them. So you'd have to continually buy and sell.
There you go. Now you're working. Now you're flipping. Now you're investing. Now you're going in and buying this derelict piece of property. You're putting in effort. You're putting in genius, if you like, your nouns. Your ability to recover this property,
You can't
and then you make
rent
it.
it. You've got to sell
And
it.
then you sell it, and you make your killing on it.
Right. So
Tired,
you
very happy.
prevent the rental side of things. You just ensure that people can still have the freedom to buy and sell. So you're not curbing people's right in that respect. It's just the number of houses they're allowed to rent.
Yes, to lease. And you obviously have no problems if you're leasing it as a business. So if for businesses need premises.
Yeah.
At least they used to before work from
So you
home
can
thing.
do it for business, but you can't do it for private consumer, private tenant.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's an interesting idea.
Okay.
And what benefit will that bring? Will that bring house prices down? Will that bring
house
rent?
prices?
But then
bring house prices down.
So what happens if people they want to rent?
Well, like I said, the council will take care of all that.
So that means you're selling property back to the government, and the government have got the money to buy all these properties because they're going to need a pool of properties themselves, which they then have to maintain. They just simply can't afford to do that. So
I don't know about that, but all that can be sorted out. It might pay you over a period of time.
It would be interested to see whether the finance works in this thing, whether that's even doable. That you can't rent.
Let me tell you what's doable. See who suffers. Okay, it's never going to be the government. All right, it's going to be the people. What happened in the Nigerian government recently? I think they were trying to prevent, and I'm being charitable here. They were trying to prevent election fraud. So they said to Nigerians, look, we're going to change the currency, which they've done before. So come and hand in all your old notes, and we'll give you new notes. So Nigerians idiotically took their old notes and handed it to
the government,
to the banks, and then waited for their new notes.
Waited? Do you mean they weren't giving them? They weren't giving them.
And then the government was like, "Yeah, but these new notes, pal." People were like, hey, "Hold on, all right. So what do I spend in the meantime?" And the government was like, "Yeah."
Oh, come on, it can't be that bad.
What are you talking about, Tony?
Really?
Tony?
Does that genuinely happen?
That's what genuinely happened. And the people were having to pay money to get money. So if you wanted 10,000 naira, you were going to have to pay like 1,000 or 2,000 naira to get your 10,000 naira.
What? How was that even allowed? How would people do this?
The economy just kind of crashed.
Not surprised. That's just insane.
And they did that for like 2.5 weeks or something before the elections. And it's only now, after elections have ended and everything, we're like, you know what? Naff the new notes. Come back and take your old notes. So I don't think I'm not even sure there's ever actually a plan.
Oh, really? Was it a ruse then, just to get the money?
Just to put in the money so that people couldn't bribe others.
Terrible.
So the point I'm trying to make is when the government just decides, look, man, we don't care what you think about it. This is what we're going to do. It's doable. That's the reason I'm explaining that it's a third world country, but believe me, man, if City Hall wants to mess you up, it can mess you up, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh dear. Okay, let's wrap up here because I'm mindful of the time. I wanted to discuss one final one very quickly. We've got a couple of minutes, so we can touch on it briefly. But what's your conclusion about this then? You definitely want to have this renters. So definitely. People are limited. Are you going to come up with a figure? What, 3 is maximum, or 1, or what? 1 seems to be unworkable.
I think 2.
I think you could have a case where you got a family with houses that they want to rent to their kids. What's wrong with that?
Sorry?
Let's say some people have trust funds. They want to their kids get a property. So why would that not work if they were renting from the kids for tax reasons?
Renting from the kids?
Yeah.
I don't follow.
Okay.
I don't understand.
I'm just sure about this arbitrary figure of 2. It seems quite low. I mean, if it was 5, say, you allowed 5 max.
Yeah,
some people have way more.
I think where you live and then another one because this and that. I think that's fine. I would actually just make it 2 and just if you don't like it, you don't like it. Tough luck.
Interesting concept. We'll have to see if any of our listeners agree with that and think that could be something workable.
Yeah, come on, listeners.
Will that affect the house prices? Would rental incomes
Very
drop? Will it
positively, I
actually
think.
negatively affect the economy? It would need to be thought out as to whether that's something that could be worked.
Well, the people thinking it out are the people who have a vested interest in keeping it as it is.
Well,
So
indeed.
no, let's just do it.
Interesting. Right, okay, let's move on. We've got a couple of minutes very quickly. We wanted to discuss a topical issue that's been in the press of late regarding Gary Lineker and the government refugee saga. Now, those of you who may not be aware of this, Gary Lineker is a topical, very successful ex-footballer in the UK, England football player, captain of England, golden boot winner in the World Cup. So very, very good. He's become the leading commentator on the BBC, highest paid person, and he's got loads of followers on social media, etc. And he pointed out via a tweet regarding the new government policy regarding refugees. And in so doing, he's been taken off air by the impartial BBC. So the government possibly leaned on the BBC to do this because they thought that their new policy was okay and got the backing of the people, they said. But Gary Lineker said that their policy was likened to 1930s Germany. Now, he didn't specifically say Nazis. He didn't compare them. He just said the rhetoric used in 1930s Germany. The government took umbrage and they transposed the words into meaning he accused them of being Nazis, which obviously that wasn't the case. But there was a big uproar and he was asked to step away from the BBC and to host the matches over the weekend. In solidarity, all the presenters chose to back Gary and stood down from their role. So the BBC were left with a schedule they couldn't fulfill. They had to last minute changes. It was a massive, massive mess. And it's all because of the government's stance, because this new proposal isn't just something that Gary Lineker protested about. The United Nations, the global Jewish side said it was not a good policy. The human rights people said it wasn't a good policy. So everybody is literally against this new government proposal for refugees. And Gary Lineker has been singled out as the bad guy in all this, when in fact the government are heading down a way of trying to deal with refugees in really an arcane manner. And he was just pointing this out. But why did you want to discuss this briefly? Because we've got a couple of minutes, just very quickly.
I just feel that we shouldn't be canceling people for making statements. It's supposed to be a free society, and we're supposed to have free speech. And I'm a free speech person, so I'm very pro free speech. And for me, I can understand it if he said something about football, something untoward about football or a footballer, something to do with why he's on the BBC. He's not on the BBC as a political pundit.
But he didn't say it on the BBC. This is the thing.
Not even that.
He did it on Twitter.
Whether it was on BBC, well, okay. So first of all, he didn't do it, like you said, on the BBC as part of his job, because obviously, if you're on the job, then you have to watch what you say.
Absolutely.
Everybody has to, okay?
Indeed.
Because you're representing the company at that point.
Yeah.
But he privately, like you said, on Twitter, not only was he on Twitter, he also wasn't talking about football. Yep. If he was talking about football and saying, I think this team sucks big wind or something like that, then you can say, hang on, you're supposed to be impartial, man. You're not supposed to be getting into all that. And that's inappropriate. And then the BBC has a point. But it's just basically he's just sort of, twatting on Twitter. Exactly. I call Twitter twatter. There's been a twat on Twitter. That's his blooming problem, man. Should that affect anyone's job? As a matter of fact, Why does anybody say anything on Twitter? Everybody seems to be getting into trouble. Every time they say something on Twitter, they get into trouble.
Yeah.
Why say anything on Twitter, for goodness sakes? You know?
Well, but you're self-censoring. You should be able to, in a free society, say pretty much
we're
what
not
you
in
like.
a free society, pal. And
Well,
anyway, that's the point I'm trying to make. That
okay.
For me, it's ridiculous. I have no idea why the BBC, reacted apart from the virtue signaling.
I think they were leaned on because there's also a bit of an issue with regarding the chairman of the BBC, who is appointed by the government, and the chairman of the BBC was involved in giving a £800,000 loan, arranging it for Boris Johnson. So he got the job, which seems to be via strange circumstances in terms of favors.
800,000 strange circumstances.
Well, he didn't give it to Boris Johnson. He arranged for Boris Johnson to get that loan, almost like a
big difference
or help. Yeah, indeed. And now, obviously, the government have got upset that Gary Lineker's directly attacked them.
And it's such a small thing to be upset
it's
about.
Awful.
Anyway, it's not even so. That's his opinion.
Indeed.
So as a government minister, just go, Gary.
Yeah,
I think
it's because he's got a big influence on Twitter. He's got 7 million followers, which is quite a big following.
Well, at the same time, sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. So, my counter to Gary Lineker's position, Lineker, whatever his name is, my counter would have been, "What's your solution? Just let everybody in."
No, I mean, that wasn't his solution either. I don't think it wasn't his solution either. I think he's spoken in the past that people should be checked on their merit individually. You can't create a law.
If you come in illegally, you can't.
But some people, that's the whole point of the human rights bill, where some people have no choice. Where they come in illegally because they have no other means of getting to safe haven.
Okay, there's absolutely nothing like that. There's no way you can get to Britain without passing through some other country that's safe. We're not on any indirect route from anywhere. You have to come from the continent. So automatically, forget that. Okay, that's BS.
No, that's not true.
No,
because some people come here because A, the language, they speak it already, or B, they have relatives.
You've just changed.
But I'm just giving an example. Everyone is in their own merits.
According to the UN refugee thing, you stop at your first safe haven. The UK cannot be your first safe haven. We are surrounded by safe havens everywhere. So it's impossible to come here, especially
what the UN says.
Do you know what? Because I've actually argued about this online, so I'm 1,000% sure. It's first safe haven. And there's no way you can get to the UK without being somewhere in the continent that's safe. And then you're jumping onto a boat and you're coming here illegally. So zero sympathy from me. Illegal immigration, Nietsky. What is the solution for it? When I hear a solution, I'll be willing to entertain arguments against what the government is saying. But without a solution, I'm not prepared to tolerate anything because it's just whining and moaning at that point. You can't just say this is the problem. Yeah, okay, it's a problem. What do you suggest we do? And if you can't give me a concrete, cogent suggestion, you're not serious and you should just be dismissed.
Interesting.
And the thing to do is to dismiss Gary, whatever his name is.
Gary Lineker.
Dismiss him as a buffoon and then just carry on. He can go back on BBC and talk about football.
Political influence is as big as facts and evidence. That's the problem. If you have enough people who are against the policy because the movement has made it so, it's looking at it not with a logical head. It's looking at it with an emotional head, which is what the government are afraid of in this case. They're thinking,
Well, I don't support government fear. I support people in government going to the mattresses and going around and explaining themselves and explaining themselves thoroughly. That's what a government should do.
But their justification is
they're taking the easy way out. That's it. They didn't go to the mattresses to fight for what they believe in. No. Go door to door.
They just suppress the quiet. They just suppress what's been said. So the argument isn't there to begin with.
Exactly. And that's no good because people start getting very suspicious.
Which is what's happened. It's backfired, you see.
Well, exactly.
They could have got away with this by itself if they hadn't had made such a big issue and tried to get him off the air.
It's not even good governance. It's not even good governance. It's get out there, make your case, explain everything properly so everybody understands. What the heck?
Indeed. Anyway, unfortunately, we've really gone over time for today. So but I hope it's been enjoyable for our listeners. But unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.